Did you know that the largest basic land panoramic series takes place in Scars of Mirrodin block? These basic lands came out in a series of 4 connected images that shows the artifact lands of Mirrodin in the background, the ancient den in the plains panoramic, the seat of the synod in the island panoramic, the vault of whispers in the swamp panoramic, the great furnace in the mountain panoramic, and the tree of tales in the forest one. Now each of these mosaics are only 4 panels wide, but in Mirrodin Besieged, they added 2 additional panels to each of them, with more grim subject matter to imply how the plane was doomed from the start. In the plains panoramic, the razorgrass field slowly fades into darkness. In the island, there's the carapace of a dead Phyrexian tainting the water. In the swamp, they add a dark pool of green necrogen mists, showing that the Phyrexians were taking advantage of all of the death. In the mountains become more shredded and needle-like, as the land becomes non-traversable. And finally, in this forest, you see the trees start falling over as the sun begins to set. They absolutely knocked it out of the park with the design on this set, and it remains my favorite Magic the Gathering block to this day. Merch, like, comment, subscribe. Hello, we are back with Back to Basics, episode number 20. A show where I take EDH commanders and try to find the perfect basic lands to fit them. I love seeing someone sit down with some beautiful basic lands, but something I love even more is seeing how well those lands match their commanders. One quick note before we begin. I like to give the artists credit for their artworks, but I may not pronounce their names perfectly. I'll try my best, but please forgive me and correct me if that ever happens. Starting things off, we've got Haktos the Unscarred. Now, Haktos' art and playstyle really focus on the battlefield of soldiers that he's leading, so finding planes to fit this style was relatively simple, because the subject matter of a flat field matches his. However, finding mountain artworks was relatively difficult, because the goal then became to find a mountain that allows for as much flatness in its scenery as possible, while also matching its color, but I think I found it. I wanted to have the plains match thematically, while the mountain matches abstractly, as though representing Haktos himself towering over the battle. So take a look at this plains from the Boros Guild kit illustrated by Young Hao Han, that shows a battalion of soldiers, and this gorgeous mountain from Avacyn Restored illustrated by Yaitan Zana, showing a massive boulder standing powerfully in the middle of a field. I feel like the color styles and themes all match here, and the mountain artwork really stands out in this pairing. But I also have another pairing going down the same theme. Take a look at this plains from Jumpstart illustrated by Jed Chevrier, and this mountain from Theros illustrated by Adam Paquette, and also happens to be located on his plane of origin, which is definitely a plus. Second on the list, we've got Tameshi Reality Architect from Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. The cool thing about Tameshi is how complex and full the scene is. Having so much complexity, it's actually quite difficult to understand what the background specifically is. That, and coupling together the fact that there is very little emphasis of white here, being dominated by blues, purples, cyans, and reds, made finding matching basics more difficult than initially realized. But that being said, I have 3 different pairings for you to look at, and each one focuses on different abstractions of the artwork that we see here. The first pairing focuses on the color and structuring of the scene, with this island from Ikoria illustrated by Jesper Ising, imitating the billowing of Tameshi's tassels, and this plains from 5th edition illustrated by Pat Morrissey, that has the reds and the blues alongside. While it wasn't able to exactly match frames as well, I liked how the plains matches, doing its best impression of an island while also remaining a plains. Now from a lore perspective, I wanted to emphasize the futuristic world that Tameshi is from. However, the Kamigawa Neon Dynasty lands were not exactly matching from a color perspective, so I widened my search to related cities and imagery. Take a look at this surprisingly neon-colored island from Return to Ravnica, illustrated by John Avon, that matches the color and overall darkness of the artwork, and pairing it with this plains from Riot Games' Secret Lair, depicting the futuristic city of Piltover at sunset. This pairing was great, because it puts a positive spin on the dark color palette, while also showing off futuristic city life, despite all 3 of the cards being from different planes. And for the third potential pairing, I wanted to show off some full art frames for you to consider. Take a look at this plains from the Streets of New Capenna, illustrated by Electrodeco, and this full art island from Streets of New Capenna as well, that has a statue that looks so close to Tameshi in the foreground that I felt like it was worth mentioning. I felt like this urban pairing was too good to pass up, even though the plains doesn't exactly match up color-wise. And up in third today, we have Killian Ink Duelist from Strixhaven. Killian's style is remarkably simple. Focusing on the whirling of the ink around him feels very important, while also showing off that gray monochromatic color scheme that dominates the scene. So keeping all of that in mind, I found this planes from the Magic Fest 2020 promos, illustrated by Jonas DeRoe, and coupling it with this amazing swamp from the Grand Prix promos illustrated by Donato Jean-Cala. I felt like this swamp is just a perfect representation of the ink swirling around Killian in his artwork, and it was a rare opportunity to see this land match up with a color that suits his aesthetic perfectly. For a more tame interpretation of the movement of Killian's ink magic, I found this swamp illustrated by James Pegg from Avacyn Restored, and this plains illustrated by Tyrese Nielsen from Tempest Remastered. The thing I liked about this pairing was its color, capturing the monochromatic tones while also having hints of the white and black inky colors that serve to extend Killian's spellcasting. Up in 4th place today we've got Kroxa, Titan of Death's Hunger, which ended up being a lot of fun to find basic lands for. I'll start with this alternate framing from the Secret Lair drop, because this version was actually quite simple to find basic lands for. Take a look at this lineup using the unfathomable crushing brutality of basic land Secret Lair drop, illustrated by Mark Riddick. Or, for a more budget option, this mountain from Innistrad Midnight Hunt, illustrated by Daria Klepnikova, and this swamp illustrated by Pig Hands from Innistrad Crimson Vow. I really enjoy how well the Innistrad Eternal Night basic land match the alternate framings for Kaldheim showcase cards. The heavy presence of black, coupled with the strong woodcut style, feels like a match made in heaven. Now for his standard framing, there's actually a little bit more nuance necessary when picking out basic lands for him. The thing that stuck out to me wasn't actually Kroxa himself, even though he is admittedly very imposing to look at in the frame of the image. It's how he stands out in stark contrast to the pillars of marble in the courtyard he's crashing into that caught my eye. That, coupled with the red accents in the image, narrowed my decisions down, and I ended up going to the plane of Amonkhet to find a matching set of basic lands. Take a look at this swamp from Hour of Devastation, illustrated by Mark Zug, that shows the destruction of the courtyard and the pillars, and this mountain from Hour of Devastation, illustrated by Titus Lunter, that shows the ruins of an entire city. And while it was unfortunate that I wasn't able to find lands specifically from Theros that showed the destruction that the Titans caused during their reign, I felt like these two lands were good representations of that, and conveniently, neither of them have the Nicol Bolas references in the artwork to distract, which was good in my eyes. A second way of looking at it would be to look back at Kroxa himself and see which lands we can match from looking at his skin tone. So take a look at this mountain from Dragons of Tarkir, illustrated by Titus Lunter, and this swamp from Shards of Alara, illustrated by Mark Tedden. I feel like these lands do a great job of emulating the cracks, ashen and mottled color palette, and stony exterior of Kroxa's form. And 5th on the list, we've got my most ambitious project yet. Since this is my 20th video, this makes this commander my 100th commander, and so today we'll be doing Kenrith, the Returned King, for my first 5-color commander pairing on this channel. The difficulty with matching 5-color commanders with their basic lands is not that there aren't enough matching basics to fit their theme. It's that there are so many different playstyles for Kenrith that the potential matches make it difficult to know which ones to actually select. However, the benefit of 5-color commanders is that you can do full sets of lands, which makes it quite satisfying to find a cycle that you enjoy. So, working through Kenrith, I'll be focusing primarily on his artwork, which follows a motif of a king on his throne looking down at you. So take a look at this cycle of lands from the Magic Fest 2020 promos, all illustrated by Jonas DeRoe. This plains, this island, this swamp, this mountain, and this forest. I feel like this was a fun idea to imagine Kenrith watching the game that you are playing as spectator, and they all look great in foil. For a budget option along the same theme, there are the Battle Bond lands illustrated by Titus Lunter that show the same area, but are cheaper to purchase. This plains, this island, this swamp, this mountain, and this forest specifically. These are a great option if you're looking for something that isn't in foil, because the promos I showed earlier only come in foil variations. However, trying to go thematic with my choices, I decided that the next pairing will be one that is themed around castles, or representations of Kenrith's kingdom. So take a look at this swamp from Shards of Alara, illustrated by Chippy, showing a beautiful stone courtyard, this forest from Return to Ravnica, illustrated by Richard Wright, this island, illustrated by Richard Wright as well from Magic Origins, this mountain, illustrated by Noah Bradley from Magic Origins as well, and this plains, illustrated by John Avon from the Magic Premier Shop promos, and available only in Japanese. I liked finding this many representations of structures that could possibly be Kenrith's kingdom, and I actually found another pairing if you'd indulge me. Take a look at this forest from Adventures in the Forgotten Realms, illustrated by Piotr Dura, this mountain from Kaladesh, illustrated by Yaitan Zana, this plains illustrated by Titus Lunter from Strixhaven, this island from Strixhaven as well, illustrated by Louis Staniek, and this swamp from Strixhaven, illustrated by Titus Lunter. I feel like these hit all the same notes as before, however, this pairing is brighter overall, which is a plus. But there you have it. 5 more commanders, sorted for which basic lands I think match them best. But I want to see what you think. Tell me which commanders you'd like me to try and pick up basic lands for. Comment below, and let me know, and have a great day.